Namaste. Good afternoon. Got off one podcast, started another. Totally awesome. Let me see if I can turn everything down, make sure that I can see your chat, and we can go ahead and get started. I don't see chat moving yet, and I don't see too many people here yet, so we'll give it a few minutes to let people roll in. If you don't mind, it would be really helpful if you are on chat just to type a few things so that I can make sure that you're here and that it's working and that we can have an interaction back and forth, because no one's typing there right now. Okay, someone's there. Thank you. All right. Our regulars are here. That's good. I'm having some awesome tea as we're waiting on people to come in. We're going to be about 30 minutes today. I wish that we had a little bit more time. I always say it's only going to be 30 minutes because that's the required amount of time that I give you guys for big lessons. But really, it does need to be 30 minutes today because my daughter's home from school with strep and she's a mess. So this tea is Flora is the name of it. It's really awesome Ayurvedic tea that's really, really cleansing. You might like it. As Crocodile Dundee would say, it tastes like shit that you can live off of it. But it's really, really good for you. Yeah. How am I doing today? I just got out of a podcast about fear and about frenetic energy. And, I had some sort of a massive internet attack on my router, and it was really invasive and it shut my whole system down. Tomorrow will be day 2. We're finally up and running, which was hard. We had to cancel a lot of appointments yesterday. We almost had to cancel both of my podcasts today, and then my teenagers saved the day at the very last moment. Tomorrow, we're having someone come in just to make sure that we're perfectly secure and do hardwiring and things of that nature. My daughter's sick, and she's been really incredibly needy because she's sick and she's 5. So it's been a bit of a tough pace. Seeing God in all. That's what I wanted to answer your questions about today. And I've been getting some of my teachings from the teachings of Pamela Aaralyn. So if for those of you who haven't read some of her work, you might want to. I've been getting some of my teachings from, what is it called? The Oneness teachings that's channeled through a being called Rasha. I've been getting some of my teachings directly from Archangel Lucifer, who comes as well side by side with Archangel Michael, strangely enough. It's something that I've been learning since childhood, is that the two of them actually work together, that they are two sides of a similar Christ-conscious coin. So it's not what you think. You guys I'm trying to not give away so much of the channeling on Friday because it's going to be super amazing to be able to sit with this particular archangel and talk about duality and non-duality and the middle path. So that's going to be interesting. Yeah. Where do you want to start today in your questions with that? Someone asked, could I share a chant that would help with unity and to help me be less judgmental? Well, yes, but first let's talk about what that means. What does being judgmental mean to you? It doesn't just mean you are judging other people. When most human beings come to me and say, I'm judgmental, or I want to be less judgmental, the biggest way that you can be judgmental is when you are judgmental towards yourselves. And then also it's about the judgment of nothing, meaning you're not judging something as positive or negative. You're not judging it as bad or good. You're not making decisions in ways that cause you to formulate attachments, expectations, or to apply labels. When you see God in all, the only thing that means is that you formulate an awareness that whatever is external is also internal, that there is no such thing as separation. You begin to really step into the law of oneness. So that's more of what I meant today when I said, try to release judgment. It's not just you're being too judgmental on yourselves and others. It's about not attaching labels and expectations on anything, which is actually what the Course in Miracles teaches, for those of you who want some further reference later down the line in these teachings about how to be not judgmental. That, in my perspective, is the best place to get that from. But insofar as a chant to share with you, I would do hum, me, hum. Hum, me, hum. When you chant hum, me, hum, it means I see God in you, and the God that is in you is the God that is in me. So when you chant it, it just sounds exactly like it is said. Hum, me, hum. Make sure you put your teeth together when you're doing M's in any sort of sacred chanting. Allison had a question right away, and she said, I'm going through an inner transformation, like I'm giving birth to myself. How do I know everything will be okay? Am I being heard? Well, I'm listening. I'm responding. I hear you. I see you. I acknowledge you. What do you mean by am I being heard? I want to turn that question around a little bit and sort of get further. I think I know what you mean, but I never want to make assumptions, which is another part of losing judgment, is to never assume that you know, and to be okay with not knowing, which means there is no fear of uncertainty. When you see God in all, you understand that everything is uncertain, that everything is being created in the here and now, that the past is done, you've already created it, and the future doesn't exist yet because you haven't created it. You're creating it in the moment, even as you conjure it is being created. But yeah, how do you know everything will be okay? You don't. Yeah, you do. You don't, because the ego will continually find ways to catastrophize. You'll see on YouTube what I mean. I had a really great discussion with Brian Germain, who helps people. He's a very powerful, fear-busting person, who jumps off tall structures and mountains and out of planes. And also, he was sort of a coach on fear transcension and has written many books on the topic. He and I had this discussion today on YouTube, and it'll be downloaded within the next few days or so. But we had this great discussion about just this. On one hand, you don't know you're going to be okay, because if you're operating in ego, you are catastrophizing. What if you're not? Question yourself. What can you possibly really be afraid of? In the 3D, you understand that all of it is an illusion, that the body and the mind are only tools anyway. So what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of being uncertain about? What's the big deal about uncertainty? How can it possibly be bad? And I'm not being patronizing when I say that. I'm genuinely trying to get you to observe from a really strong standpoint and a reference point of disidentification. Stand out here, disidentify with what normally scares you, and observe it in a different way. You don't. Your ego never knows that she's going to be okay. But your higher self knows from the moment they come into body. Your higher self knows that it is just a body, that it is a tool for you to transform and grow and expand with. But my rhetorical question to you is to ask, what if you are not okay? To look at my resistance process on YouTube and to go further. Another question, I am reprogramming my energetic blueprints and bodies. In meditation, I take each body's energetic blueprint, the emotional body, mental body, physical, and spiritual bodies, and line them up in front of me. And then I reprogram them individually. Do you have any suggestions on this process that will help in my ascension? I suggest you stop at the word ascension and talk to me a little bit more about what you believe that ascension is. The deepest cellular debris that you could focus on if you want true oneness and to release in judgment is to deprogram shame. That is the strongest problem in the human conscious collective. All the cellular debris of shame that we're carrying through that's so strongly and deeply embedded. But insofar as processes, I am losing labels and processes more and more in these teachings, and recognizing that the deeper value is when you can drop all processes and know that you are perfect, and know that you reprogram in your thoughts, that every time a thought comes up, it's about the awareness of what that thought is. What is it that is behind that thought? Maria said, there are no monkeys. Fear is an illusion. Yeah. Way to put it back on me. But yeah, monkeys, I am terribly afraid of them, and fear is fun to play with. So I've been sitting there playing with it, because I have my trip to Peru coming up pretty soon. From an Ascension handbook, was it Saint Germain's? Because he has some pretty good stuff. But what's more powerful is when you can drop all that and be more present with the now, as opposed to thinking that you need to clear it. You clear it just by your observation of understanding that you are reprogramming your thoughts in the moment and observing them and catching them before they turn into fear and shame. That is the biggest way. Peru will change my monkey fear? Shh. Really? I hear they're everywhere. It was spiders a few years ago, and I got through that. So that was a lifetime fear. Monkeys is only a recent fear, so hopefully it won't be too bad. Oh, the Serapis. That's a good one. It's a really, really good one. I read about, one chapter of that, and then he made me stop and told me he would download the rest. But it was pretty good once I got the download. Okay, where do I want to start with you today in my journal? You can continue asking questions, by the way. Okay, yeah, here. Right here in my journal. This is where I wanted to start. Hang on. The imagery of physical experience and what you believe is real and what you believe isn't. What really brings physicality into form. All of that is conceived in balance when you begin to make choices to come in. The law of oneness is already a given, okay? The full spectrum of action and reaction is necessary in order to achieve it vibrationally. But what you're focusing on when it comes to oneness is actually the balance of the giving and receiving nature of all things. I was discussing this a little bit today in my class when I was talking about the blood disorder that likes to continually play with me. It doesn't own me, but it happens to be teaching me something. And, I am going through winter. So I have this curiosity, just like I did this time last year. I had a curiosity about, have I really mastered it? Because it is a cold antibody, condition, that's genetic. And when I get cold, my red blood cells literally blow each other up. They fight against each other. It's a strange thing. They begin to kill each other off, and then they explode. The strangest thing ever is called cold agglutinin disease. So if my body gets starting around 35, my hands start to turn blue, lips start to turn blue. I start to lose oxygen because I will literally become so anemic that I can't breathe. And if it goes down to 30 or below, I get really, really sick normally. But for the past 2 winters, this winter and last winter, I did not get very sick. And I don't expect to this winter. Like, I haven't gone about it in that way because I'm starting to wonder, is that just a part? I mean, blood cells are, dying and being reborn all the time, just like your hair cells and everything else. So I began to formulate a bit of a vibrational wonder, a frequency, a conscientious nature of wonder, to ask myself a question. about this judgment that I had formed, this judgment of, what doctors have told me that it will eventually kill me if I keep getting in cold temperatures. Well, I live in cold temperatures, live in Utah, northern Utah. So basically, I formulated this belief that I could be in environments, and if that's true, that my blood cells will, do this, and all of that will occur, then what if I can create a ball of chi in my body that would replenish those blood cells as they are dying, because that is the law of oneness, giving and receiving. And since I started to do that, I have not had any problems. I don't think that anyone's experiencing any sound problems. I think it's probably just you, Raven, at this point. So I would probably restart everything and make sure that your speakers are working adequately. Yeah, because I don't normally, when I can't hear, like everybody's typing all at the same time. So here's another thing that I wrote down from Michael and Lucifer, who are coming in together this morning. They said, you've come to a moment of potential karmic resolution in order to recognize from a place of non-judgment the essence of both roles, the choice of action and reaction. Those roles in any interactions with other human beings, to know that there is divinity in everything. Back to the reference from Yogi Bahjan. If you can't see God in all, then you can't see God at all. Well, if you do see God in all, then you will see everything, all the divinity within yourself all the time as well. So what Michael said about this was, you foster emergence of another. So basically, when you're looking at another being, you are emerging and becoming them, and they are emerging forth and becoming you. Each of you fosters this emergence of the other into a state that transcends the need to perpetuate conditions that are calculated to hold you here at diminished levels of awareness. And what he means by that is the conditions that, that's what he means by the conditions that are calculated to hold you here at diminished levels of awareness. That's what he calls being asleep. And in my channels of the Elohim for the past few weeks, he's been talking about the differences, as have Serapis Bey and Lucifer, Ramana Maharshi, and many other Elohim beings have been discussing the differences between being awake, being asleep, and being aware. So when you have diminished levels of awareness, you might be awake, but you're not aware, or you might be completely asleep. But most of you are watching this are awake, at least. Not many beings on this planet are fully aware. Otherwise, we wouldn't really feel the need to continue to be in bodies. He continued on and he said, each of you as consciousness, meaning we're all consciousness. We are all the same. Each of you as consciousness volunteered to go back into arenas of turmoil, such as Earth 3D environments, as an emotionally bound piece of fragmented consciousness, in order to explore some of the infinite possible variations on the theme of separation from who you really are. Think about that statement for a minute. Who are you really? You are source. But you, with certain emotions, such as shame, which is the primary opposite of oneness, by the way, that is the core cause of all judgment, is shame. If emotions in the negative facets cause you to bind into a piece of fragmented source consciousness, that fragment of you is trying to realize its oneness. So you're exploring these infinite possible variations of the theme of separation. So what does that mean to you? The infinite possible variations. To me, it means you're looking at it from the point of a divine creator. You are perceiving yourself as a body and a mind, so that you can create different experiences in this vehicle of body, mind, in the body-mind vehicle, that theme of separation, you will play it out and observe every way that you could possibly believe that you would be separated before you go back to oneness. So that is why we judge. We are exploring. Another thing that Michael said was, as long as you continue to manifest your particular egoic investment in taking what transpires in judgment at face value, then you serve to reinforce the parameters for repeating the same kind of experiences. And this is what he calls karma. So what does he mean by taking what transpires involving shame at face value? That means you think it's real. Everything that's happening to you must have meaning and must be real. Well, there's a difference between having a meaning for the sake of karma and for it actually being real. Maybe it has a meaning for the sake of creation so that you're playing and observing separation and all the infinite possibilities thereof. But if it comes from mind and body and belief in external, how can it possibly really be real? Okay. Kalandra asked a question. She said, I've been having issues with anger lately, and I'm thinking it is the illusion in loss of control. That's normally powerlessness is the standard negative core belief that accompanies that, loss of control. How do I dispel feelings of control and wanting to control, etc.? I'm going to ask you to go into them and ask yourself how that serves you. If you want to control something, how in the past has it served you? The identification of such will be exactly what you need to go forward. When you identify more of how something serves you in that way, then you'll be able to lose attachment to the need to control. I would ask you to look at my resistance process on YouTube. There are many, many ways that we've talked about the resistance so far in class, so I don't want to talk about it again unless you want me to repeat it because you haven't been in class a lot. And if you do, if I get enough yeses, I will repeat the process. If not, I urge you to go to my playlist called Spiritual Development and look at my process called Resistance. And that will be the answer to that question completely. That is the complete answer in that process. It's a good hour, 30 minutes long. But if you commit to it, it really, really helps. Also, the works of Byron Katie are incredibly helpful in that. So this is a process where you play with your ego and you get really accustomed to it. No worries at all. We've just talked about it a lot, so I don't want to repeat things in class unless you just need more influence or investigation of that work, like if you didn't understand it before. That the resistance process could be its own entire class. It's very intricate. What else? What are another pointer that he wanted me to talk about? So insofar as you feeling like you need to repeat those kind of experiences, that's called karma, not because it's punishment, but because if you're judging something, you are observing it in various different ways until you can accept that it is actually not your truth. Humans are funny that way. So the piece of you that's separated from your own divine essence, somewhere along the way has been hashing out these vibrational manifestations of this self-perpetuating judgment and shame cycle. And now you're here to shift that pattern, to realize your oneness, and for the calling of divine intent, that has been the nature of creation and recreation for a long time. If you put down swords and shields, Michael said, then you are home. And home is nowhere to go because home is within. So what does he mean by putting down your swords and shields? The sword is the power over mentality that Serapis Bey has discussed through a lot of his material and the current channel material that's already out there, and through what he's channeling through with us in these classes. What he means by the sword is the power over mentality that we talked about in the last class, when you feel that need to be in power over and to control. And then the power under mentality, which is when you feel the victim, that is the shield. That's what Michael means by the sword and the shield. Then home is realized. It's no place that you have to attend or awaken. Enlightenment is not something that can be sought because it already is. It's not a goal to seek. You already are enlightened. Michael has a sword because we believe that we need protection, and he honors that feeling that we have, that belief that we have, and he plays a role for the fact that we believe we need protection. That's why. So he represents that. He also has a shield in the other hand, and he has that because he represents the balance between the power over and the power under mentalities. Michael himself is balance, and when you see the truth of him, you'll actually see Lucifer, not Michael. Lucifer is that star, that shining star of balance and neutrality, the middle way when Michael puts down the swords. Lucifer, you'll hear this explained in my channeling probably tomorrow, is on the left-hand side of God, along with Jesus. Michael is on the left-hand side of God, along with Jesus, and Lucifer is on the right-hand side of God, along with Raziel and Azrael. So there are other, angelics over there as well, but they're all a part of Christ consciousness, representing various things. Someone just says, we all in this group have some degree of awakening. We do meditations and so on. How can we just have one-on-one with higher realms? We are putting the love. What is that we are missing? I'm not sure I understand what you mean by one-on-one with higher realms. There could be various definitions of that. Are you saying, what do you mean by one-on-one with higher realms? To me, I don't perceive myself in a higher or lower realm, so that's just a hard thing for me to comprehend in your question, I suppose, because that's not my perspective. Yeah, do envision Michael without a sword. Dina asked, was there in fact a war in which the archangels partook? They're all shaking no. Michael and Lucifer are shaking their heads no. That was a human story. One of the first things that Lucifer said to me as a child was, I am the gaps between your stories. When he was trying to explain oneness, he said that to me. Communication, listen and receive. Receiving is the thing. So you're saying, how can we have giving and receiving and listening and receiving without higher realms? You get to it when you understand that you're already doing it and that you are in those higher realms and that you already are communicating with yourself every single time you open your mouth. You are channeling your higher self. When you understand that you are not separate, then you'll understand that all the gifts come from within. And every time you talk and you hear your voice vibrate through your body, it is Source talking through you. And especially once judgment is out of it, it becomes even more clear. Then you will hear all the different frequencies and feel all the resonant energies of your higher selves as one being. And that will not always feel human. And that is the nature of Christ conscious channeling, whenever there is no judgment attached. The more you release the shame and then the judgments, the more you will have what you're talking about. You understand what I mean? The more you receive that nothing is external. What else did he want me to share? Let's look at the time, make sure we're still okay. The image you hold of yourselves as autonomous beings, separated and from a divinity that you simultaneously worship and fear. And you know what he means by that, what Michael means by that, the divinity that we worship and fear, as in God, a wrathful God, will be revealed to you as the illusion that it truly is. So he's asking you to release religion and perception of God in that form of wrathful, angry, punishing, you must worship me or fear me, that kind of God. You're not the focal point of awareness you believe yourself to be. That's from Lucifer. You are simply a facet in a light spectrum, a glimmer of focal point, a split-second flash of awareness in a vision that is infinite and eternal. That's how quick this lifetime goes. And when you're out of the body, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's this little glimmer of Pamela, that little glimmer of Dina, that little glimmer of Nick. We're all just divine sparks. And it's so much bigger than what we think it is. More from Lucifer, he said, you have deluded yourself into believing that you were the main event for so long that you have amassed a volume of incarnate history of epic proportions, stories, Adam and Eve, gardens, punishing wrathful gods. And that supports your conclusions from society and religions and culture. And you reference a world around you that is calculated to reinforce those perceptions in your society's teachings. Far from view, yet ever present, is a level of awareness that transcends in its overview of your personal history, the details with which you define your identity. And that level of awareness, conceived in balance, has transcended the need to play any of the roles or to experience the levels of conflict and resolution upon which you continue to focus as you work out the final details of your sojourn into human experience. So, conflict resolution. Let's talk about that. What do you think that Michael means by that? When you have the level of awareness that's conceived when you're in balance, that level of awareness, that level of you, that oneness transcends the need to play these roles of conflict resolution, and then more conflict, more resolution. I call it the human addiction to drama. So let me know if you have any thoughts on that. But it's these roles that you just won't need to worry about. You know, the processes, the definitions, the opening your third eye, all that kind of stuff. You know, it's tough because on one hand, Lucifer can teach all these things, and on another hand, he's not the one in the body sitting here experiencing and observing, right? So it's this level of awareness that observes patiently at the first notion of your true multidimensionality. And when that takes root, that level of awareness of which you are a fundamental part waits to include you in the loving embrace of all it understands itself to be. In this way, the process of ascension is ongoing. And at each level of escalating vibration and complexity are aspects of your own being, each lost in the illusion of its own particular vantage point and view, each oblivious to the momentum that unites all aspects of the whole. That singularity of focus is characteristic of physical embodiment and a necessary part of the human experience initially. Your adventure in form of this particular identity and the ones that may follow could not hope to be carried out from the vantage point of the overview. In order for your human experience to be authentic, you will once again agree to experience the perception of fragments of consciousness, regardless of its growing multidimensional complexity. And as you continue to awaken within the structure of this particular illusion, you will integrate the final nuances of an entire category of incarnate experience. You're drawing conclusions based upon levels of understanding that are characteristic of higher levels of awareness. And as you progress even deeper into this process of emergence, you will begin to be able to grasp the significance of the experiences you have lived through over and over and over again for centuries. And this is what you call reincarnation. Someone said, you mentioned, I'm comfortably in third dimension and touch fourth, sixth, and seventh. I'm curious if that could mean I'm skipping fifth. No, there's no skipping. That's more of a linear perspective. You might be just not really finding the necessity to operate there. If you're learning in other ways, that's perfectly okay. Michael continued this morning and channeling, and he wrote down this. It is necessary now, as you stand at the threshold of another kind of world, and you call this the world of ascension, the new earth, 5D. It is necessary, as you stand at the threshold of this world, that you are able to see clearly the path that you have traveled in order to get there. And this is why you have been curious about your past experiences. It's necessary that you must be able to glimpse the limitlessness of your true identity from within the confines of physicality as a foundation for the categories of experiences to come. This is why you are curious, for only then are you able to weave the threads that unite all you have been and done in a way that allows your release of these patterns. And this is when you wake up. Were a reprieve from the myopic perspective of the fragmented consciousness not programmed from this pivotal point in your journey, you would be relegated to continue and to repeat those patterns and unable to make the shift in awareness interdimensionally. That is the nature of the transition at whose very edge you now stand. The last remnants of the core issues of this lifetime have been stimulated to the surface of your awareness for your observance and your scrutiny, and this is what you call judgment. Your recognition of the habitual patterns of interaction with others, who may continue to tempt you into the areas of combat and judgment, now helps you to distance yourself vibrationally from those kind of encounters. You do so not by boundaries, for you realize there is nothing to separate. You do so by love, compassion, presence, and understandably raising your frequency while being present for the being, because you know they are you and you are they. Ultimately, you come to recognize yourself as a traveler that you have come to embody. You are the same person who has judged you, and just as you have judged others. For you no longer dwell in the depths of the illusion that has dominated your emotional scenery for the duration of your lifetimes. As you continue to pay the occasional visit to the levels of judgment experience, it is as if one would attend a neighborhood of long ago. You no longer feel rooted there. You simply observe, oh, this is how I used to feel. This was a tough experience during those times. And the emotional investment in continuing to hash out the details of karmic agreements no longer hold any attraction. You are observing them from a higher vibrational standpoint, and this is how you release judgment. Simply observing and then raising your vibration to understand that you no longer have that need. These kinds of encounters have a familiar flavor to them as you observe them, in that you have perceived, received, and tasted them before, yet they no longer resonate with the bitterness that might have once provoked you into a judgmental reaction. And now there is, more likely than not, a feeling of indifference at the sound of a familiar cue. For the one who is responding to it has transcended the limitations of your incarnate identity and perceives all you encounter from the vantage point of the overview. Notice how Michael kind of slipped up there, the overview. You just went to a higher level in that moment of transcendence. It is the aspect of self who is able to process incidents that continue to arise in the moment and to draw an instant correlation to parallel circumstances in the past. You have connected with this heightened level of perspective through the very paths of emotion that once might have led you into battle and judgment. And now the battlefield within has been cleared of karmic debris accumulated throughout the history you share with others who assist you in bringing this chapter to completion. Do you realize how he threw in there that they assist you? They're all playing a role. Those who have hurt you, those who have you perceived in the past that they would have caused suffering, they are all playing roles. Ultimately, each of you is able to view an old familiar scenery from a newfound vantage point of transcendence. And the pathways of the emotions you have worked so hard to stabilize are those upon which your consciousness will travel in connecting you with heightened levels of awareness. It is your emotional foundation that unites all the aspects of the consciousness that make up your multidimensional identity. That foundation, once cleared of ego, and of the ego-based need to respond to provocation and judgment serves as the pathway which all aspects of your multidimensional self unite into oneness and recognize that common bond as one that is shared with all creation. And this is unity. Okay. All right. So how do you adapt that momentum, that shift when you're going from judgment and polarities into observing and going into a multidimensional overview, as Michael called it? And this is the final thing that we'll teach before we wrap it up. Lucifer wrote down this quote, and he said, adapting to the escalating momentum of change, integrating parallel aspects of self into the composite that is you, you are experiencing the perceptions of augmented levels of reality. So in other words, nothing is a past. You're integrating parallel aspects of you into a composite. I know that the information perceived here is different, but for some of you, you'll feel like this is completely transforming your life. For some of you, it'll be a bit of a confirmation for what you're going through, what's already known at a deeper level. But that knowingness does not emanate from your mind, where the conceptual understandings are stored and then retrieved, but rather from experiences upon which you draw, and making your life choices reflect life experience and then form the foundation of your inner truth. So the building of that body of experience is that process that Lucifer has called transformation. And this is what he says about it. One is able to embrace the concept intellectually when it is presented in a way and recognized to be what you perceive as truth. Yet until one has the experiential knowingness that comes of having run the understanding through the filter of life and living, giving and receiving, it is necessary that there be an element of trust. We call this allowance. It is necessary to the law of oneness. Please trust that you have encountered a particular piece of information at precisely the right moment. There are no mistakes. Trust that it will surely be followed by an episode in your divine life script that will serve to reinforce this concept. Back to Michael. When one is working with information that constitutes major shifts in one's life perspective, it is to be expected that repeated episodes on that theme will manifest as experience. In this way, one is able to build a base upon which a radical shift in one's worldview can rest. And what do you think he means by radical shift? I'll tell you what it meant for me. From high school until now, I lived my life with a person that I perceived as a sociopathic narcissist. He was my best friend in high school, married him, had 3 kids with him, went through a horrible 2.5-year divorce, lost 3 of my kids, not through the court system, but through actual kidnapping experiences where the father would take them unlawfully, and he did not have custody, and the cops would do nothing because it was a civil dispute. So what happens here in Utah when someone takes your kids, even if they don't have custody, if they're a parent, they don't call it kidnapping, they call it a civil problem, and you guys need to work it out. So I didn't see my kids for 8 full months. And I was made to believe that I was a bad guy, so to speak. So my life-changing experience in non-judgment is when I could forgive that person and send love to him. And every single time I am in court, which is often, he likes to bring stuff back to court all the time. He likes to fight the custody all the time. He loses over and over and over again. He got a guardian ad litem involved. He's always asking for something in the courts, and we're always there, like many times a year. And the courts just say no, but you have to go because that's the process. I can sit there and look him in the eye, not be afraid, and also experience non-judgment and just say, well, I really feel a certain empathy for this person, a certain sympathy too. a certain feeling of, I wish I could help. I can't. And I realize that I can't because narcissism is a very strong thing. But my personal transition was being able to say, I can send love to this person. I can maintain a high frequency and not let this affect my life. Not let this make me feel like I am in the power under mentality over and over and over again. Nor does it have to shift to power over where I get to be the perpetuator either. So that was really super hard. Super, super hard. It continues to this very day. To this very day, he's always bringing me back to court and always trying to, fight and get the kids. Super, super hard. So you have to trust and you have to shift your perspective. That was my personal transformational experience with it. So let's go back to what he was saying. When one is working with information that constitutes major shifts in the life perspective, it is expected that repeated episodes on that theme will manifest as further experiences. You are not being punished. Please keep in mind that in this way, one is able to build a base upon which a radical shift in one's worldview can rest. These are not understandings that can be instilled overnight. One can anticipate being exposed to a concept and to then experience several examples of that concept in rapid succession, and each concept builds on the other as you continue not to judge them. So in other words, every single time I go back to court, when I face that fear of, I'll lose my kids, I'm bad. Oh my gosh, I'm channeling Lucifer. I'm bad. When I observe my ego saying that, I'm like, oh, that theme again. Yes, shame. Yes, familiar friend that taught me so much. I thank you. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I love you. And it's over. Ho'oponopono, just like that, every single time. Every single time you approach that familiar taste of shame, trying to come back and make you believe that something's going to be taken, something's bad's going to happen, you're going to be punished. Ho'oponopono, forgiveness. I thank you. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I love you. Okay, continuing with Michael. Let's see how much time we have. 10 more minutes. I know I said I was only do 30 minutes. I just can't. This is just too much, too strong. I can't stop here. In this way, conceptual understandings of your world, at this new world, this 5D world, ascension as you have called it, at the precipice of which you stand, can be reinforced. And ultimately, one is then able to know rather than to believe. Now, that's a heavy judgment because you know what I'm about to say probably. Things are perpetuated based upon beliefs. So when you know, as opposed to creating from beliefs, that's a big micro and macro decision. That's a big shift from micro to macro. Do you know what I'm saying? The criteria upon which your perception of this phenomena are based cannot be limited to the structure of a world that you have left behind. In other words, don't rehash. Your circumstances will shift in subtle ways as these days come to their approach, and you will be swept along effortlessly in the momentum of that shift if you allow for the possibility that the key word of the times at hand is change. That means uncertainty. Change involves the complex nature of uncertainty and you not knowing how it's going to be. The foundation for life as you now know it is a fluid one. And the rules underlying the world you are co-creating are evolving at the ever-changing moment of now. You notice how he's switching to Lucifer's teachings, how things go back into the present moment. Did you guys realize that the energetic differences between channeling Michael and then Lucifer? They're like aspects of the same being, but Lucifer goes straight into the present, whereas Michael talks about all the karmic stuff and how to move out of the past. You who embody these changes in human physical form will bear witness to several worlds in one lifetime. It will serve you well to adopt a perspective that allows the unprecedented to become the normal. And you will come to trust in the perfection of a process that often serves a taste of the glory that is to come, well in advance of main events. You can anticipate having the opportunity to bear witnesses to occurrences that would normally be dismissed as figments of imagination in the present day world of reality by consensus. Those of you who are leading the wave of what is to come in the 5D will not be afforded the luxury of eons of recorded history as a reference point. Each of you will be blazing your own trail through unknown territory as you create a world to come that is custom made to your specifications. You will be assisted in making the best use of your newfound skills by trusting in the validity of your perceptions and in your very real ability to create the reality that you experience. And as you become a practiced artisan in crafting your life experiences, you will garner the experiential reinforcement of the understandings upon which creation is based. Ultimately, your life script will be less of the hit and miss history of leaping ahead and backsliding that you have experienced as part of the transformation process. You will be able, after a given number of episodes, to recognize the common thread with which you now begin to weave an entirely new tapestry of creative experience. And as you begin to delight in the recognition of your ability to alter the outcome of certain situations by directing your attention to the quality of vibrational energy with which you approach them, right? Vibrational energy. So you're directing your attention by observing the high quality of energy. You have to have a very high vibration to do this, guys. And in the moment, you observe your judgment and shift it first into neutrality and a balanced vibration, and then into a higher vibration of love. One can become very clear that the consequences of one's thoughts and actions manifest as one's experiences when that result is virtually instantaneous. You guys begin to experience that yet? When you operate in the vehicle of wonder, it can become super fast, but when it becomes like in that moment, it can be something really, really easy, such as, sometimes I'll be thinking like, I wonder how my assistant's doing right now. And he'll like text me, hey, is there anything I can do to help you? What's going on? Can you give me an update? I'm like, there you go. And then sometimes it gets like really, really bigger. I'm like, oh, I bet you my kid's like, today I really needed some help. And I was having this almost frantic anxiety breakdown and I needed to shift my energy. And my guys are like, you really don't know how to do this. You need presence. You need to ask for help and you need presence and support. And I had like a class and a podcast and I didn't want to miss either. And I was still hacked and my computers were down. So I had this brand new router finally that I had purchased and everything. And my kid was at school and I'm like, well, I don't know how to do this. I'm like sitting there with Xfinity on speakerphone going, please help me. And they're like, did you unplug and replug? And I'm like, I got 30 minutes. Yes, I've unplugged and replugged. So in that moment, I just had a brief thought about my child who's a tech genius. He's 15. And then he texted me and he's like, any update on the internet? I'm like, it's sucking. And I need to be on a podcast in 20 minutes. He was like, well, good for you because I knew you would. And I kind of intuitively heard you. And I got myself out of school early and hopped a train, But the train's running late. So if you want to make your podcast, you better come get me from the train station and I'll fix your problem, because I felt that you'd have a problem. Instantaneous manifestation. 20 minutes later, I made my podcast by like only a matter of like 5 minutes to spare, but I made it. Yeah, that's an instantaneous vibrational shift where in that moment I'm like, oh, I need presence. I need help. It was neutral. It wasn't scared. It wasn't positive either. It was just like presence. Now I need help. What do I do? So I need to shift my energy into I can get help. It wasn't an authentic shift. I wasn't in a bad place or a good place in that moment. I just thought, I wonder if I can get some help from a technical genius right now. And then my kid texts me. And his school has never let him out early before, which is, even though they're alternative school, like they don't normally do that. So they let him out. He sends it and asked to go home. So that's the essence of all this experience. Oneness is a heavy topic, and the law of oneness is something that we'll probably have to teach over and over and over again. It's going to take some time. It is a deep topic. It's pretty profound. So we'll have to go deeper into it in later classes, guys. I'm going to go get back to my kid because it's been about an hour. All right. I love you all. I'm going to stop the podcast now. I'll see you for tomorrow's channeling. This weekend, I will repost the schedule for next week, but it is the same as it was this week, but I'll repost it just for a reminder. And the link for the Lucifer channeling is already up and available. So all you have to do, if you're not going to be able to be here, is put your comments there below the post. And you can click directly on the YouTube link from the Patreon site to bring up in a separate browser as you normally do. I think you guys are getting used to this. That's awesome. I'm getting used to it too. So I will see you tomorrow in trance channeling for Archangel Lucifer. And then I'll see you next week. This weekend, I'll be putting up more polls about what other topics we can cover for level 2. See you then.